I'm Dave Silverbrand, and thank you so much for joining us on this, the maiden voyage of Planet Humboldt, an independent news magazine dedicated to providing local viewers with a unique look at our community. Now, here are the top headlines from the Humboldt Sentinel. The city of Arcata is once again under fire over civil liberties concerns, with former Design Review Commissioner Mark Delaney threatening to file suit over what he claims is the city's lack of disclosure of just how much taxpayer money is being spent on their legal bills. For their part, Arcata claims that this information is subject to attorney-client privilege. But in a letter sent by Delaney's attorney, Peter Martin, he asks whether the city of Arcata has something to hide by not disclosing the expenditures of its city attorney's office. Quote, "Information about legal fees is privileged only if it would disclose tactics or strategy. A request for a total does not disclose tactics or strategy," unquote. Martin is also the attorney for local political campaign guru Richard Salzman, who has filed suit against the city, seeking to overturn many provisions of Arcata's anti-panhandling ordinance, which criminalizes the holding of a sign at a street corner in the downtown area. Salzman claims his fight with Arcata is about free speech, while the majority of the city council sees the issue as one of safety and freedom from harassment by aggressive panhandlers. We'll have more on this story in a future episode. In other local legal news, the city of Eureka has finally hired a new city attorney. Cindy Day Wilson, an attorney out of Bonita in San Diego County, will start her new job in City Hall in a matter of weeks, following lengthy closed-door negotiations with the Eureka City Council. Day Wilson is a member of the State Bar of California's Environmental Law Section Executive Committee, which oversees the education of lawyers in environmental regulatory law. She's also a former lobbyist for the National Conference of State Legislatures, a trustee with the San Diego County Public Law Library, and also served as a professor at the University of Redlands. Eureka has been without a permanent city attorney since July 9th of last year, when Cheryl Schaffner resigned and left the county. Her departure was shortly before an embarrassing legal settlement by the city due to complaints of harassment by former Eureka Police Department employee Tawny Hansen against her superiors, in particular City Manager Dave Tyson. Since then, the notably high-powered and high-cost hired gun Bill Bragg has served as interim city attorney, occasionally with help from Paul Hagan and Andy Stunich. Aside from the Hansen settlement, Eureka faces a number of ongoing legal claims, real estate negotiations, and possibly another personnel lawsuit stemming from the controversial no-cause firing of former Eureka Police Department Chief Gar Nielsen 3 months ago. Also making the news here in Eureka is another flare-up of tensions between school administrators and the Eureka Teachers Association, this time over the rising costs of health care premiums for school teachers. About 70 teachers turned up for the most recent meeting of the Eureka School Board, the last one to be held at the Walford Avenue head office before its sale by the district. They claimed that the school board's negotiators were attempting to impose non-negotiable demands on rank-and-file teachers.
You were obviously intent on setting a new precedent, one that would have teachers paying into their benefits. You seem to pride yourselves on the fact that you hadn't even done the calculations to see what the cost increase would be. Pardon my thinking. But when you have an interim superintendent with a tremendous attention to detail and a certified public accountant on your bargaining team, and you don't even take the time to figure the cost of a benefit increase, then there is something bigger going on. And I fear the same pop political poison that is anti-union, anti-social services, and eventually even anti-public education is starting to seep in.
In previous tough budget years, the union has already absorbed a series of concessions on their pay, benefits, and working conditions. Yet, according to the budget projections prepared by Chief Business Officer Paul Ziegler, Eureka City Schools continues to face a drawdown of its reserves over the next 3 budget years as school enrollment continues to decline. You can watch special gavel-to-gavel coverage of the Eureka School Board meeting thanks to the Humboldt Sentinel. It airs every Saturday at 2 p.m. on Access Humboldt Channel 11 and is also available on YouTube. Hot off the wire in national news, today Congressman Mike Thompson announced an award of $3.3 million for the construction of a Yurok Veterans Memorial Cemetery. The project is expected to serve over 2,500 Native American veterans and their families. In a press statement, the congressman said, quote, "The veterans of our local tribes have served this nation with bravery and honor. They and their families have earned the right to visit the final resting place of these heroes without the hardship of having to travel hundreds of miles to do so," unquote. An astounding 90% of Yurok men of eligible age served in both world wars, and Native Americans continue to be more likely to serve their country in the armed forces as compared to any other ethnic group. And finally, in the headlines, locals are still scratching their heads over a late-night September 3rd fire which destroyed a children's playground at Chevret Vasad Park in Arcata. The city has established a reward fund for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the person or persons responsible for that fire. Cleanup of the site, located in an otherwise quiet Arcata neighborhood, is underway, with the Rotary Club of Arcata offering to match donations up to $4,000 for reconstruction of the playground. Arcata Police Chief Tom Chapman said, quote, "The community support for this park has been overwhelming," unquote. For more on these stories and other local news items, read all about them on the web at HumboldtSentinel.com. And now to dig behind the headlines for an in-depth look at our corner of the world here on Planet Humboldt, we go to our crack team of independent journalists who've been beating the streets to find the news that matters to you. First up, College of the Redwoods journalism students John Terry and Justin Baker team up with Planet Humboldt producer Charles Douglas to bring you this report from the campus of Humboldt State University, where a groundbreaking alternative energy research institute is setting the course for a clean, green future.
I am going to cut the ribbon and open our building.
The dream of a clean, safe, and affordable renewable energy future took a step forward recently in Humboldt County. Hundreds of campus community members, scientists, and politicians were on hand to witness the grand opening of the Schatz Energy Research Center, located near the top of the Humboldt State University campus in Arcata. Their director, Environmental Resources Engineering Professor Peter Lehman, shared his enthusiasm for CERC's important work.
Here we are, dedicating a magnificent new lab and office building. This new facility will really expand our capabilities, especially compared to our old home. On the upper floor, there are faculty, staff, and student offices and workstations. On the lower floor is our main lab with fuel cell test stations and a lighting lab. There's a separate electronics lab and a spacious, well-equipped shop. The whole building is designed around a courtyard which serves as an outdoor lab, and there we can do experiments that we wouldn't want to do inside.
HSU's president, Roland Richmond, appreciated the groundbreaking scientific discoveries of the Schatz Center.
Before there was much attention to the consequences of our use of huge amounts of energy, the Schatz Energy Research Center was developing alternative and sustainable sources of energy for the future of humankind. The Schatz meets its clean energy mission by performing research on renewable energy systems. They've designed, built, operated, and demonstrated clean and renewable energy technologies. They've trained students in renewable energy technologies and educated the public about the advantages of clean and renewable energy technologies. They've also had real-life experience with hydrogen as a fuel for transportation and stationary power generation. The engineers in this center have planned, designed, obtained permits for, built, and installed hydrogen generating equipment, hydrogen storage and dispensing systems, and a hydrogen fuel cell systems at locations up and down the state. These systems were created from the ground up by our engineers who developed expertise in integrating equipment from multiple manufacturers along the way.
While he lamented the fact that the Citizens Redistricting Commission redrew the North Coast out of his constituency, Congressman Mike Thompson said he won't soon forget his work with CERC and HSU in promoting energy alternatives and green jobs.
Today is not only a great day for Humboldt State and the community and renewable energy, but this is a real metaphor for what we need to do in this country in order to get things going, to create jobs, to become more sustainable, to be more reasonable in our policy approaches. And right here, you got it all. You've got education, you've got innovation, and you've got renewable energy. And those three things alone, if we were to double down right now in these tough economic times, we wouldn't be reading reports of zero job growth in August or any other time. This is the future. And this is the future, and this is the sort of thing that we need to be investing in. And an investment today in any of that, renewable energy, education, or innovation, is going to pay huge dividends, not only immediately, but into the foreseeable future. And this is the sort of thing that we need to demand start happening at every level, but certainly out of Washington, D.C.
Inside the center, celebrants got a look at some of the innovative work of scientists and student researchers alike, from the production of clean, efficient biomass energy using thermal gasification to the demonstration of a hydrogen fuel cell powered vehicle. Just as important to CERC is promoting energy efficiency and giving consumers the knowledge they need to make wise choices. Research engineer Christian Radeski demonstrates.
This is a pretty intuitive test. We put the light in here, we fully charge it, we put the light in here, and we just let it go until it reaches the end. And we can say this box says the light lasts for 5 hours. We test it. Maybe the light lasts for less than that or more than that. But we want the manufacturers to give the consumers the correct number so that they can make good decisions.
The construction took 2.5 years to complete, but the work of the Schatz Center was already well underway, most recently in the form of the Renewable Energy Secure Community Partnership, which looks to meet Humboldt County's energy demand through locally produced and green sources. Kyle Balmer explains.
The great thing that we found is that we have massive resources here on Humboldt County, wind in particular and biomass in particular, as well as to a lesser extent hydropower. And those three are what I consider the big three. And if we can aggressively pursue and promote those, we can end up with a grid that's over 75% renewable, up to 90% or higher renewable. And then if we combine that with converting from conventional vehicles to electrified vehicles, whether they be totally electric vehicles or plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, then we can displace a large amount of the gasoline usage we have with renewable energy, because we're using that renewable electricity to power our transportation fleet. And then finally, we can also replace natural gas furnaces or propane furnaces with electric heat pumps. And electric heat pumps run off electricity, and if that's renewable electricity, then we are greening up our heating of our homes and buildings.
With America's future energy supplies under increasing constraint, the Schatz Center's work isn't going away anytime soon. For Planet Humboldt, this is Charles Douglas reporting.
Thank you to John, Justin, and Charles for that report from the new home of the Schatz Energy Research Center. We'll stay in Arcata for our next story, just off the campus at the D Street Neighborhood Center, where elected officials, business owners, and another set of eco-pioneers gathered for a different kind of celebration, a celebration of zero waste. That's why Humboldt County is known for hosting some of the early pioneers of recycling. Attendees at the Zero Waste Forum look to go beyond bottles and cans to change the way we manufacture the items people use every day.
I just said, don't you think we should sing her happy birthday? Oh, no. Yeah. Don't you think we should? Okay, let's go. Happy birthday to you. That's his birthday too. Happy to you. Happy birthday, dear Wesley. Happy birthday to you.
This was a birthday celebration of sorts, with State Assembly member Wes Jesbro and local recycling pioneer Maggie Gaynor both turning 60. Yet while they were surrounded by their friends and colleagues in their hometown of Arcata, the Zero Waste Forum wasn't about counting up the years, but counting down to zero in a long-term effort to end garbage as we know it.
We have a public that has come to take, I believe, recycling systems for granted. They don't understand the true costs. Many don't know why they are recycling. Without their fundamental understanding of resource conservation and local economic development purposes for recycling, we have a county system for recycling that is void of the old waste not, want not ethic. I want to urge us, all of us, we're in this together, to return to our roots. Grassroots organizing and programs that are designed to reduce the amount of waste generated and increase the amount of discarded resources that we recycle.
Locals are literally left holding the bag at the end of the waste stream. And so that has tended to focus all of our efforts on trying to pull things out at the very end of the process, and less effort on trying to design products and set up infrastructure to reduce the waste stream through the manufacturing and marketing of products. So the solution to this is producer responsibility, or product stewardship. And under product stewardship, the producer of a product is required to solve the problem the product creates, such as setting up some sort of a take-back system for their product, or source reducing the product so it doesn't generate as much waste, or designing for recyclability, or including recycled content.
Our goal is not just to get it taken care of by some third party, but for the manufacturer to actually take responsibility for their product, ultimately designing waste out of the system.
One of the more exciting new ideas detailed at the gathering is the development of an anaerobic digester, essentially a food cooker which would produce clean energy and remove food scraps from the waste stream. Such a facility is already operating in Oakland under the auspices of the East Bay Municipal Utility District. Almost half of Humboldt's current waste stream consists of organic waste, and a new plant proposed by the Humboldt Waste Management Authority for Eureka looks to transform this problem into a benefit. The HWMA's Juliette Bone detailed the plan.
The vast majority of materials remaining in our waste stream are materials that we can put to another use, and organics being a big portion of it, as well as traditional recyclable materials. This project will support maintaining local nutrients in our soils, supporting our agriculture, supporting our ability to produce food locally for our community. Right now we send nutrients, the food waste, the yard waste, to the landfills, except for what we divert here locally. And then we have to go get fossil fuel derived fertilizers because we don't have those nutrients to grow our crops. So this project will help to address that and also reduce air pollution. Another important piece of this, especially in this day and age, are the creation of local green jobs that will be sustained so long as this diversion program is also sustained. We will be retaining more money in our local community. Right now we pay to have our waste taken somewhere else. We pay to have it hauled there. And then they're generating electricity off the methane produced from our organic waste. So we're paying 3 times for managing our waste when we keep that money here and keep that economic engine going locally. I like to call this the waste dollars in our community. In addition, again, let's keep those nutrients where they belong, back on our soils, helping us produce the food that we need to feed our population. Also, this is sort of a side piece of this, but fat soils and grease going into the wastewater treatment plant, they have to be collected so that to reduce the cost to all of us for keeping those lines clear. Right now, all of that waste is collected and hauled to the Bay Area. By providing this infrastructure here, we can help reduce the cost to all of the businesses who have to pay by mandate to have this stuff collected, and we can use this material to help keep the cost down for the overall food waste portion of the project that is designed for all of Humboldt County.
Zero waste enthusiasts aren't just looking to the government to take action. Humboldt County native Tabora Bloom talked up a couple of innovative social enterprise models for locals to reuse.
This is the Scrap Exchange in Durham, North Carolina. This place is amazing. They have everything you could imagine there. And they are also a nonprofit. They've been around since 1991. Their mission is to promote creativity, environmental awareness, and community through reuse. So they have retail of raw materials. They sell everything from floppy disks to bottle caps to foam balls, you know. They have an artist marketplace where they sell things like the flowers that Monica has been making. They have an art gallery, which is kind of like Morse Graves has a junk art show in the fall every year. So similar to that, less actual functional projects, but more artistic products. And then they offer workshops. They do birthday parties. They do corporate team building. They do problem-solving projects with different entities. They really kind of do as much as they can, since 90% of their funding is generated in-house and only 10% is from grants.
With the recent controversy splitting local cities as to whether to keep their recycling processing contracts local or to send their business to solid waste of Willits, Humboldt County Supervisor Mark Lovelace ended the day with a note of caution.
There's a lot of people out there who frankly don't know and don't care that there is such a thing as the right thing. And if we really want to maximize our efforts on any of these kinds of issues, such as recycling, we have to find ways to reach those folks. And they're going to do these things when it's the easy thing, when it's the less expensive thing. And so we constantly have to look at ways to do that and recognize that the thing that motivates all of us here doesn't necessarily motivate everyone else.
Reporting for Planet Humboldt from Arcata, this is Charles Douglas.
Special thanks to former Access Humboldt intern Sam Kaplan for contributing to that report, which highlights some real signs of progress as Humboldt County continues to be home to a host of innovators and entrepreneurs. Charles is also working on a feature-length production of the Zero Waste Forum for future broadcast. Turning to national news with a local impact, Humboldt County remembered the 10th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks this week. Humboldt Bay National Wildlife Refuge manager Richard Guadagno perished on United Airlines Flight 93 when it crashed in rural Pennsylvania that day. And all Humboldt County residents have lived with the consequences of how our country has changed in the last decade. CR journalism student Andrew McFarland crossed the county to cover this story, from a memorial parade in downtown Fortuna to a tribute to firefighters at the Arkley Center in Eureka.
Humboldt County residents gathered in downtown Fortuna on the morning of September 11th to commemorate the 10th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. Local police officers and firemen led a memorial procession from City Hall to the Fortuna Veterans Hall, where Councilman Dean Glazier and Fire Chief Lon Wimburn addressed the crowd.
Today we honor 2,923 individuals who lost their lives.
There's been 55 additional deaths contributed to the effects of 9/11 due to illness associated with rescue and recovery issues. And unfortunately, I don't think that's going to stop. Studies have shown the cancer rates are up 19% overall by the rescue workers. If you take away the normal cancer that firefighters face with smoke inhalation and that sort of thing, that actually bumps the number to 38% additional cancer rates, or higher cancer rates, due to the toxins involved with that World Trade Center issue.
And the rockets red glare.
Fortuna wasn't the only community to recognize first responders. The Arkley Center for the Performing Arts also hosted its own tribute to firefighters.
Tonight is actually our third annual Freedom First event. Every year we put this on to commemorate America. This year, being the 10-year anniversary of 9/11, we decided firefighters were the perfect people to honor.
Departments from Blue Lake to Southern Humboldt converged in downtown Eureka to be recognized by notable locals for their everyday service to local communities, including former Eureka Mayor Nancy Fleming, ex-fighter and upcoming supervisorial candidate Rex Bone, and 4th District Supervisor Virginia Bass.
They willingly accept the fact that when something goes horribly bad and horribly wrong, and everyone else is running out, they're running in, and they're risking their lives for people they most likely will never know.
Supervisor Bass introduced the guest of honor, Battalion Chief Robert Ingram of the New York Fire Department, who talked about his experience at the World Trade Center on 9/11.
Several firefighters ran past my office, which was 2 doors down from the chief of the department, Pete Ganson. At the time, I thought someone may have been injured and needed some assistance, so I told Gene, I have to hang up and go, something happened. I went down to the chief's office. Inside, several members were looking out the window. The time was 8:46 a.m. They had a clear view of the smoke coming out of the North Tower, and the first reports were coming in that a plane had crashed into the building. Chief Dancy, his command staff, and I responded immediately and arrived on scene in less than 10 minutes. We were right on one side of the Brooklyn Bridge, and all we had to do was cross over and go a few blocks. We were already requesting information from the FAA towers at LaGuardia and Kennedy airports. We wanted information on the plane. We were already discussing the fact that this was not an accident. The sky that day was blue and crystal clear. It could not have been anything but an intentional hit on that tower.
Although both events were a celebration of patriotism and resilience, former state assembly candidate and Humboldt Tea Party patriot Karen Brooks of Bayside sounded a note of caution about what Americans have lost in the last 10 years in terms of individual rights.
It is not in our best interest to give up our freedoms and civil liberties for the perception of being safe. The Patriot Act, airport screenings, and the like have treated all Americans as if we are the enemy. How can we be safe if we're less free? Ben Franklin and Thomas Jefferson are often quoted as saying, "Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty or safety."
For Planet Humboldt, this is Andrew McFarland reporting.
It's difficult to underestimate the effects of 9/11, which are still felt by all of us today. Thanks to Andrew and Charles for that report. And be sure to look for their special news reports on 9/11, premiering right here on Access Humboldt Channel 12. Speaking of consequences of 9/11, matters of war and peace has dominated our national dialogue for the last decade, as American troops continue to be deployed to Afghanistan and Iraq, with drone aircraft flying in the skies over Pakistan, Yemen, Somalia, and the other nations. One of the most prominent opponents of U.S. wars overseas is Cindy Sheehan, whose son was killed in action in Iraq in 2005. Equally critical of the Bush and Obama administrations, Sheehan spoke in Bayside recently at the invitation of the Humboldt Bay chapter of Veterans for Peace, and Planet Humboldt director Gabrielle Fellows was there to bring us this report.
We're the people, we employ you, you will do what we say, not what the corporate banksters say.
Nobody cares.
Get out of my space.
Nobody cares.
Get out of my space.
All we are paying is
Radical and inspirational messages of peace permeated the community of Arcata on August 24th with the arrival of anti-war activist Cindy Sheehan. Having already sailed through 10 previous destinations on her Revolutionary Communities tour, The infamous Peace Mom arrived at the Bayside Grange in a giant blue bus, accompanied by other Veterans for Justice members. Humboldt's local chapter of Veterans for Peace hosted the dinner and discussion with the aid of event organizers Mashaw McGinnis and Carl Stenzel. Cindy's West Coast summer tour was aimed at planting seeds of peace to motivate local communities to continue their grassroots efforts at creating holistic alternatives to our mainstream toxic culture. Speaking on various topics such as war profiteering, global politics, recycling, and economic terrorism, Ms. Sheehan started off on a light note.
Okay, when I was here last time, we were in Iraq and Afghanistan. Then it's been expanded into Pakistan. Barack Obama is responsible for increasing drone bombing in Pakistan by 300% since he's been president. And that's not just like if Barack Obama's president for 8 years, like Bush was president. No, that's in real numbers. 300 times more.
Cindy wrote a letter to President Bush in 2004 to voice her disgust at his waging wars overseas to punish those our country suspected to have conceived the 9/11 attacks. Having lost her son 7 months previous to an enemy combatant in Iraq, Cindy pledged to spend her time attempting to hold the president accountable for his actions. In 2005, Ms. Sheehan helped lead a protest camp outside Bush's Texas ranch.
I was camped in a ditch outside his ranch. Yeah, it was very good accommodations there. It had tents, heat, fire ants, snakes, Republicans, everything.
The last time Cindy was in Humboldt was nearly 6 years ago. Since then, our military presence overseas has increased.
We're sending more troops to Afghanistan. They're going into Pakistan, Libya. We're drone bombing in Yemen, Somalia. Did I leave any out? That's like 6. Iran soon, that's what I'm afraid of. You know, we're seeing the progression. Syria, Iran, and then what else? There's not much left.
Cindy has spent hours and hours of her time marching with fellow protesters in Washington, D.C., sometimes even in front of the White House. She has been arrested at least 10 times and once chained herself to the White House fence. Last year, Cindy even received a stay-away or restraining order from the White House.
It's not like I snuck in there to a party without a ticket or something, you know, and like that one couple did. But, and that was for 4 months, and if I violated it, I would have spent 6 months in jail just for crossing a line.
Sheehan also expressed some revolutionary ideas about changing the way business is conducted from Washington.
Congress gets paid the federal minimum wage. Guess what? If they got paid the federal minimum wage, it would be higher, right? And everybody in this country gets the same health insurance that Congress gets.
Cindy encouraged Arcata to continue its goals towards building a sustainable, resilient community. In her eyes, creating healthy communities will help shield innocent people from the devious and destructive acts carried out by our government.
Once a month, you just come and bring stuff you don't want anymore, and you have a potluck, and then people take what they want, and you leave, and you take what you want. You know, that's an amazing concept, and not only does it help the environment and the economy, it helps build community, because that's what it's about.
Creating new terms to define current concepts is one of Cindy's talents. Her term, the robber class, collectively describes the people in the federal government, the corporate media, Wall Street, bankers, and the military-industrial complex. Conversely, Cindy has coined another term to describe the opposing side.
If there's a robber class then there's another class. It's called the robbed class. And I think most of us belong in the robbed class. If you're in the robber class, we expect a large donation tonight.
Although oftentimes referred to as a communist, Sheehan takes no offense.
You know, I'm a communist with a small c. You know, I want this community unity. I want people to take over their workplaces. I want workplaces to be under the democratic control of the workers. I want to be able to share in the profit, not just have my labor exploited. Stop participating in the institutions that harm you. The only reason you can be robbed is because you let them and you're codependent. Break that dependency with the robber class. You know what they know? They know that they need us. They know they need our labor, they know they need our money, they know they need our resources. Guess what? I'm not giving them anything that belongs to me and my family and my community anymore. You know, break that cycle of codependency. Thank you.
For Planet Humboldt, this has been Gabby Fellows reporting.
Thanks to Gabby for that report, and stay tuned in the weeks to come for a full hour of Cindy Sheehan on Channel 12. Humboldt County residents have a lot to be proud of, and the true colors of the community were on display the day before 9/11 with a plethora of celebrations across Old Town Eureka. The most colorful of these was the Humboldt Pride Parade, which moved to Eureka last year and expanded to a full-scale festival at Halverson Park on the Humboldt Bay waterfront. College of the Redwoods journalism student Dennis Lara Mejia was on hand with our erstwhile producer to deliver you this report.
Local residents of all stripes turned out in force for the biggest Pride Parade yet in Old Town Eureka.
We are both the Grand Marshals. We're co-Grand Marshals.
Co-Grand Marshals. I'm the fairy godmother wanting to grant equality for all nations.
I think with it being in Eureka, there's a lot more people, bigger population, more people are able to get out here.
Just to be here, see some friends, and support our fabulous community, and you know, just another sunny day, and just another day to be out there and be true to yourself.
Community organizations from across Humboldt County marched in support of equal rights, from student clubs to local churches to healthcare workers. This year's theme is Do Ask, Do Tell, a celebration of the repeal on the ban on openly serving gays and lesbians in the armed forces, as well as a call to action in response to the highly publicized string of bullying-related teen suicides across the country.
And we think it's very important. There's enough bigotry in this country, and especially this state, that we need to stand up for rights of everybody.
HSU is queer for you!
This year's parade and festival coincided with a number of other public celebrations along the Eureka waterfront. From Paddle Fest, a demonstration of water safety practices, to Cruisin' Eureka, a classic car show on 3rd Street, to the Chicken Wing Fest on the boardwalk, which featured the music of St. John and the Sinners. Although their musical tastes might have clashed, attendees at the various events demonstrated mutual respect, and the marchers expressed support for last year's move to the county seat and out of Arcata, where the Pride Parade started.
I will say that Arcata did give us a little problem. They didn't want us to trample the grass in the plaza, and I understand that.
So this is a better venue anyway. It's more space, bigger space. It's by the water. There's a nice cool breeze. So I think it all worked out for the best in the end.
So today, with all these other festivals happening in town, is just an example of what every day is like here. Every day, we can all be exactly who we want to be. And in a few moments, I'm going to go get some chicken wings.
The Humboldt Pride Committee also recognized local activists who've made a difference in the fight for equality, including former co-chair Justin Papalate.
At this moment forward, he will also be known as Saint Reaching Rainbow.
While elected officials from Eureka were conspicuously absent from the event, Humboldt County Supervisor Mark Lovelace was on hand to lend his support for moving beyond tolerance toward acceptance.
The idea that instead of saying that we can exist in the community as long as we don't, push the envelope, as long as we aren't upfront about, who everyone is. And I think it's really important that we get away from that and that we, say, we accept you in part of our community as long as you don't, wave it in our face. Don't, really come out there and say, this is who I am. And, this is a great opportunity for, just to, again, celebrate the diversity. If we're going to talk diversity, let's celebrate it.
For Planet Humboldt, this is Charles Douglas reporting.
Thanks to Dennis and Charles for that report, which once again you can see a full-length version of on your TV in a Humboldt Sentinel special report. In our final story tonight, no report on the life and times of Planet Humboldt would be complete without touching on the county's most famous or infamous agricultural commodity. We first turn to highlights of the most recent meeting of the Eureka City Council, where a new batch of elected officials are appearing to halt the implementation of the city's medical marijuana ordinance.
All right, that takes us to item 21, medical cannabis cultivation, processing, and distribution facilities. And Rob, I believe you have a report for us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council, on July 27th, staff received a police chief website article from Interim Chief Harper regarding the City of Chico's pending medical cannabis ordinance. The article described a July 1st letter to Mayor Ann Schwab from the Eastern District of the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice articulated concerns that they had issue with Chico's pending ordinance, specifically the allowance of up to 2 industrial-sized cultivation facilities. Based on Chico's situation, staff was directed to contact the Northern District DOJ office, which is our jurisdiction, for clarification on what our city has already codified, including an inquiry to size limit.
So this to me is a policy issue. And our council has passed the policy of having our medical cannabis ordinance, and I am dismayed that the city of Eureka requested an opinion from the federal government, of which we knew. I mean, I would expect that most people would know what the answer would be. Okay. Now, the council, I'm sure, would be happy to request you, direct you, give you permission, as this council has, to talk to the federal government, But I really would have liked to see this agendized so that we could have a public discussion about it. If we wanted to do it in closed session because it's possible legal stuff, we could have done it that way. I am seriously dismayed that this was done by the staff without any action from the council.
You can grow it in your house. The federal government just said that they will not prosecute you for that, so you can use it if you want to.
15 states have approved medical compassionate use with more on the horizon. The federal government has been sending threatening letters for 15 years over this. Principal state and local officials stand up to federal intimidation. Very recently, Chris Christie, New Jersey's government, said the need to provide compassionate pain relief to these citizens of our state outweigh the risk we are taking in moving forward with this program.
It sounds to me that the federal government or the U.S. attorneys, I don't know if it's the same U.S. attorney here saying this or another U.S. attorney saying that, but it sounds like it's pretty randomly enforced, selectively enforced. We've got, you know, Oakland, Chico, Eureka, but Arcata's fine. It's almost like, you know, an earthquake where one house gets knocked down, the next one's fine. I mean, isn't the federal government supposed to be a little more professional? Maybe even, I don't know, seem to appear like they know what they're doing?
Down the pike, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to kind of think it through, but we've just passed this, so I think it was prudent to find out a few things. That being said, this letter from the U.S. Attorney for Northern District of California is talking about large-scale industrial marijuana cultivation, processing, and distribution. What is large-scale? There's no definition on that. I think that's worth a conversation right there.
You know, there's several of us up here that have law enforcement backgrounds, and you know, the strong wording and the fact that we could be prosecuted for a federal crime and that our staff could be prosecuted really does concern me.
We appreciate the courtesy of Access Humboldt in providing us this footage. And for more on the issue of medical marijuana in Eureka, we turn to Andrew McFarland.
Joining me today in the studio is Attorney Greg Allen, who serves as chair of the Redwood chapter of the American Civil Liberties Union here in Eureka. Greg, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Andrew. Nice to be here.
Greg, what's the ACLU's take on Eureka's ordinance?
Well, we're very disappointed. The ACLU has consistently supported medical marijuana in the state of California, and the ACLU supported the Eureka ordinance when it was enacted. And so we're very disappointed in this backtracking, and frankly, we think it's much ado about nothing. That the letter that came from the Justice Department makes no mention of 21 United States Code 903, which allows states to enforce their own drug laws the way they see fit, as long as it's not in conflict with federal law. And as the present governor and a former Attorney General, Jerry Brown, when he was Attorney General, offered an opinion that medical marijuana in the state of California is not in conflict with federal law because it doesn't legalize it. All the state of California does is to decline to enforce certain statutes for certified medical patients.
Well, is it the role of the federal government to tell Eureka they can't have a medical marijuana ordinance?
I think absolutely not. And the Justice Department has certainly been greatly overreaching in the last couple of years, especially. If you will recall, last fall during the election, the Justice Department threatened to punish the state of California if the people of the state of California didn't vote the way the Justice Department wanted on Proposition 19. I mean, I couldn't imagine any situation that could be more overreaching than that.
Well, how is it that Arcata hasn't received these kinds of legal threats for their medical marijuana ordinance?
Well, that's a fair question, and I think that the real answer is that they didn't solicit them. The city of Eureka, when it sent a letter to the U.S. Attorney's Office, I believe sent it with the expectation of receiving the response they received. I use the cities of Oakland and Isleton and Chico as recent examples of that. And so it's so ridiculous. If you ask them, what are they going to say? Well, they're going to say it's illegal. Except that I haven't seen any problems in Arcata, and Arcata's had dispensaries there since 1998.
So where do we go from here, Greg?
Well, I think at this point, the Eureka Council is going to do what it does. I believe that, frankly, all of this was a pretext to basically put the council in the position that it was in. That a letter was sent with the expectation of the response that it would receive. There was no particular reason to send the letter, and I think that it's been a handy excuse. The present council was very against it from the moment that they took office. Virtually the first thing that they tried to do was rewrite the ordinance, and so I think in the city of Eureka, I am doubtful if any litigation, as to the general issue of the content of the ordinance would be successful. I could imagine that people who were in the application process for the permit might feel a little bit different and might, for example, be looking for perhaps a writ of administrative mandamus or something like that. But I think ultimately this has to be done through the electoral process. And certain possibilities there are to basically circulate local petitions and do a local modification of that ordinance, or in the next election cycle at the ballot box.
Absolutely. Well, I'd like to thank Redwood ACLU Chair Greg Allen for joining me today on Planet Humboldt. Back to you, Dave.
A special thanks to Andrew McFarland and his guests for providing their takes on the implementation of Proposition 215 here in Eureka. And that's life here on Planet Humboldt for this month. We're here to provide independent news by and for the people of Humboldt County. And we hope you'll let us know what you'd like to see on our next episode. Just give us a call at 707-667-3302 or visit HumboldtSentinel.com for more local news. I'm Dave Silverbrand, and I'll see you on Planet Humboldt.
Hi, how's it going?
Hi, good, I'm Norman. Good
Hi,
to
Norman.
see ya.
We're your local media.
Okay,
Local
good.
independent media. Yeah.
Right, that's good. Hey, good to see you.
Good to see you.
What are your opinions on healthcare?
Well, I'm a big supporter of single-payer guaranteed health care for all. I'm co-chair of the Healthcare Not Warfare National Campaign, which is co-chaired along with me by Donna Smith, who you saw in Michael Moore's film Sicko. She's with the California Nurses Association, and Congressman John Conyers. Conyers has a long-standing bill, H.R. 676, which provides for national single-payer enhanced Medicare for all. Everybody has the human right of health care provided for. And unfortunately, what we've gotten instead is so-called healthcare reform, which has some positive aspects, but still leaves at the center of healthcare the insurance, pharmaceutical, and hospital industry. And we still have essentially, frankly, based on economics, based on people's financial station in life, the equivalent of apartheid in healthcare. It's healthcare apartheid. And we don't have that quality access to care that people have a right to. I think in Washington, in the interim, we've got to fight for funding for particularly federally qualified health centers. And I've been here in Eureka to Open Door. I think it's crucial. The problem is whether we can guarantee adequate funding to expand the services that are necessary. Because right now there's a threat to Medicaid funding, which we know in the state as Medi-Cal, and we have these programs where there are enhanced reimbursement rates for these federally qualified health centers, such as Open Door, but it's very difficult for people to be able to plan long-term when they're in the healthcare services when the funding in Congress is year to year. Well, this is no way to run a healthcare system. So if we believe in, as I do, and many people do, healthcare is a human right, then we've got to get off of this process of letting the insurance industry gum up the works, because they're about denying us care. The purpose of an insurance company is not to provide health care, it's to get in the way. That's where their profits come from. That's where our suffering comes from.
One of the demands that's issued from Occupy Wall Street is to nationalize, as Dennis Kucinich has called for, the Federal Reserve. Of course, the folks in SF and San Francisco are camped out on the steps of the Federal Reserve and were already cleared away by the authorities once, and now they're back there. What do you think of that demand to put back in Congress's and the U.S. Treasury's hands control of the currency and financial system?
Well, the lack of transparency of the Federal Reserve is just unacceptable. I mean, we're supposed to be in a democracy. We've got to struggle to create democracy. And the Federal Reserve, behind closed doors, often impervious to meaningful audit, has been setting policy. And whether it's a monetary policy there or fiscal policy in Washington through the Congress, we've got to have a mechanism where there's open debate, transparency, full exposure where the books are. And unfortunately, the Federal Reserve has functioned largely for the benefit of the big banks, just as Congress has functioned largely for the benefit of big banks and Wall Street. And you see a documentary like Inside Job, and it's enough to make you holler, you know? The way in which that is just a huge ripoff. I mean, let's put it this way. As an opponent of the original bank bailout of Wall Street in the early fall of 2008, I pointed out that giving all this money to the banks without any sort of requirement as to their behavior changing was a prescription for disaster. I mean, it was just a sweetheart deal for the big banks. And what I and many other people warned about at the time, such as Dean Baker from the Center for Economic and Policy Research, has unfortunately come to pass. Whether you're in Humboldt County or anywhere else, in the last 3 years, we haven't had the liquidity, we haven't had the banks loaning to small businesses, haven't been providing the resources from the banks to make sure that homeowners who deserve to keep their homes, which is a vast majority of them under threat from foreclosure, to get to keep their homes. And so, you know, if we went down to the food stamp...
Enjoy your guys' circle jerk.
So were you told you couldn't let your children play?
Yeah, gave me a ticket to boot. I don't know what. I've